بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد نبدأ بإذن الله تعالى في الكتاب. يقول المصنف رحمه الله تعالى ونفعنا الله بعلومه في الدارين آمين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد is all praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of all worlds. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. The meaning of the Shahada, according to Ahl Sunnah, is لا إله بحق في الوجود illallah. Only He is the creator of everything. Only He is the Lord of all the worlds. And we bear witness to this. وحده لا شريك له. He has no partners, associates in any way, shape, or form. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. And being described, categorized as a abd, is one of the highest statuses a person can get. Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi. The Arabs used to say in their poetry, or refer to themselves in their poetry as Ya abdaha, only call me her slave. That's how dear that status is. Wa rasuluhu. He's his messenger, the final prophet and messenger. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The author says, Sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. You see, he added the al and the ashab Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the sahaba, to the salah and the salam. Know that you're only allowed to initiate the salah and the salam to the prophets and the angels. Others can be included, but it cannot be initiated for them. وَبَعْدُ, this is called فصل الخطاب. This, many ulama, they say that this is what was given to Dawood alayhi salam. فهذا مختصر فيما لا بد لكل مسلم من معرفته أو معرفة مثله. This is a short summary that every Muslim should know, or should know what is similar to it. من فروض الطهارة والصلاة وغيرهما. From the obligations of tahara and prayer and things of their liking. Meaning from the ahkam, the commands that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent upon us. فيجب تعلمه وتعليمه. It is wajib to learn it, to study it, to understand it. ممن يحتاج إليه. To those that need it. And this is how the ulama, they define things. They say that those that need it are obligated to learn it and study it. Those that do not need it but want to dwell into that field, then it becomes a requirement for them to study. So when it comes to ibadat, every Muslim needs to know this. Man, woman, young, old, free, slave, etc. Everyone. When it comes to mu'amalat, there's a little bit of leniency there. الرجال والنساء والصغار والكبار والأحرار والعبيد. He says, باب الطهارة. Note, باب, kitab, fasl, far', mas'ala. They can interchange and you can use whatever you like. The idea of one of them at the end of the day is a separation point. However, that being said, when they're used collectively, they're not meant as just mere separators. Kitab means this is a new topic. Bab means this is a sub-concept or topic within that chapter. Fasl would mean a separator between the different issues and scenarios and details within the chapter. Mas'ala would be a separate, unique issue that had to be separated to expand upon. Far' might be another mas'ala that was extracted from the previous and therefore built upon, and so on. He says, Babu Tahara, Faslun. See how he's separating? So now he's, Bab and Fasl here cannot mean the same thing. So Bab here means the entry into, or the intro into Tahara. Fasl means this section now, in this chapter of Tahara, or in this segment of Tahara, is about Furud al-Wudu. Fi Furud al-Wudu. In the manuscript, he only said Fasl. The publishers are the ones that added Fi Furud al-Wudu. Furud al-Wudu'i sittatu ashya. Now, for the most part, all of the Shafi'i Fiqh books will say it's these 6 things. Larger works might debate on the quantity, but at the end of the day, we all agree to these 6. He says, Al-awwalu an-niyyah. Where's the niyyah done? It's done in the heart. If there's a tool that you can use to help remind you of it, alhamdulillah. If there isn't, or you don't need it, alhamdulillah. And this is where saying it verbally comes, right? It's just a tool to help get you focused on what you're about to do. And that's it. It's that simple. Funny point. Those that object to saying it verbally, I told them, what if there's an ab that reminds you? An ab that tells you, hey, you're about to pray. Make sure your heart is clear and you're focused on what you're about to do. They said, yeah, that's fine. I said, case closed. Shukran. Salam alaikum. And that's for the most part. Most people that object, they're objecting because they have not studied. They don't understand the ahkam. They heard someone tell them, XYZ is bad, don't do it. And all they know is XYZ is bad, don't do it. He says, إِمَّا نِيَّةُ رَفْعِ الْحَدَثِ. Now here you see he has an alif and lam on the word hadath. He doesn't mean a particular hadath, any hadath that's on you. أو الطهارة للصلاة, or الطهارة للوضوء, الوضوء. He says, وتكون هذه عند غسل الوجه. The obligation, intention for your wudu is meant to be when you start the physical acts of fard al-wudu, which starts the furud عند غسل الوجه, when you wash your face. Now, in the Shafi'i school, the way you should be washing your face is put the water in your hands and you start from the top of your forehead at your hairline and you work your way down. So as soon as your hands are coming right there at the top of your face and the water starts hitting it, that's when your intention should be present in your heart. If you get halfway in washing your face and you hadn't intended and it wasn't there in your heart yet, then the part that you washed before the intention was present needs to be washed again. He says the second one is washing the face, all of it, hair and skin. So eyebrows, eyelashes, beard that's light, mustache, sideburns, everything needs to be washed. But there's a little exception. And that is, if the beard and the portions beneath your sideburns are very thick, you don't have to reach the skin beneath. You can simply, and this is sunnah, take some water when you're done and run it under the beard to try and get some of the skin. But that's sunnah. It's not an obligation. Okay? Now, if there is anything on your eyes, like when you wake up in the morning, blocking water from getting to that part of the face, it is an obligation to remove it. You need to remove anything blocking the water. The face runs from the beginning of the hairline to the end of the chin. And from ear to ear, ears not included, ear loops not included. the white area behind the sideburn or in between the sideburn and the ears needs to be washed with the face because that's part of the face. Now, how do I know if a beard is thick or not? The Shafi'i scholars, they use a measurement called hadd al-takhatub. So if someone's sitting in front of you and they can see the skin beneath the beard hair, then that is considered a light beard. If they cannot, then it is considered a thick beard. So if it's a thick beard, you don't have to get the water beneath the facial hair. It's just sunnah to take some water and get it underneath the beard to as much skin as you can. Number 3, غسل اليدين مع المرفقين, washing the hands from the tip of the fingers all the way to the elbow. And when we say all the way to the elbow, we mean and the elbow. So you want to go about a centimeter above your elbow. Up until there, that's your fard. Above that centimeter, that's when it comes into إطالة الغرة والتحجيل, going beyond the limbs that are required to wash, and that's extra, that's sunnah. Now, what if the arm was cut? We'll just say the hand got cut off for whatever reason, accident. The rest of the arm, including the elbow, will still need to be washed. What if it was cut at the elbow? The accident, you lost your arm right there at the elbow. The elbow joint is the connection between two bones. That means if it gets cut exactly at the elbow, the other end of what makes up the joint, what makes the mirfaq, is still present. So you'll still have to wash that tip. Okay, what if it's above the joint altogether? Then it's only sunnah to get water there. Some of the Shafi'iyya said it might be fard to get a little bit of water there, even if you're just going to touch it or tap it. And the reason why they said this is that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِأَمْرٍ فَأْتُوا بِهِ أَوْ أَتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Do you have an arm? You do have an arm. This discussion goes back to a bigger discussion, very interesting discussion, and that is, yad in Arabic, in the dictionary, technically is from the tips of your fingers to your elbow, to your shoulder. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says washing the yadayn, if he had stopped there, that would mean to your shoulder. But he said ila al-mirfaqayn. So he stopped you at a certain point. So if there's no mirfaq, would that eliminate washing the limb altogether? No, it wouldn't. And that's where that argument comes from. I don't want you to have to dig in any deep discussions just yet, but I'm just exposing you to how these discussions came about. He says, Ar-Rabi'u, number 4 of these obligations, these pillars, these integral parts of wudu that cannot be missed, مسح شيء من بشرة الرأس أو شعره, wiping some of the head, skin or hair, ولو بعض شعره, even if it's some of a strand of hair. Because what are you being asked to do to wipe some of your head? Why some? Where did the some come from? Because in the verse in the Quran it says, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ. Ba, the letter ba in Arabic, can be used in many ways. Imam Shafi'i said, obviously here it means some. And he shows examples of the ba and the different ways that it's used. In the Quran, it comes for some, it comes for all, it comes for partially, it comes for coming close to. So Imam Shafi'i, he discusses with the other fuqaha his justification for making it tad'id. Now, overall, The majority of fuqaha, 4 schools and beyond, agree that there was a sum, which is what is intended. They differed on this sum exactly. A few said the whole head, others said a third, others said a quarter. Imam Shafi'i reminds us of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was wearing a turban and he pushed it back slightly and he wiped the tip of his head. So here, that wasn't a third, that wasn't a quarter. If you say a third or a quarter, then basically you're just saying that the Prophet ﷺ's wudu was not valid. If you say the whole thing, then you said that the wudu of the Prophet ﷺ is not valid. Therefore, it has to be an undefined sum, just what is ever considered sum of the head. Okay, they say, but if the hair goes beyond the boundaries of the head, can you wipe on the hair? No, because it didn't say wipe your hair, it said wipe your head. So the long hair you have on your shoulders, you can't wipe them. It has to be the hair that's in the boundaries of the head. They said, well, what if the person's head was his hair was so curly that if you were to stretch it, it reached the middle of his back. But if he lets it go, it's all sitting on his head. No, he has to wipe closer to the roots of those hairs. He can't wipe on top of it. Because if you were to extend those strands, they're not in the boundaries of the head. So basically, he did not wipe on his head. Jameel? طيب. Number 5. غسل رجليه مع الكعبين. The feet and the hands, the rules pretty much meet up overall. You need to wash the whole foot, including and with the ankle. So you need to go over the ankle bone a bit. Okay? If a part of the foot is cut off, you have to wash the rest. If it is cut at the joint, you still have to wash the other part of the joint because those are 2 bones connecting. If it's above the joint, then it's just sunnah to get water there. And that same discussion that I mentioned earlier in the arms was present in the legs as well. But the mu'tamad is, as I'm mentioning to you, is that getting water there would be sunnah afterwards. Number 6, following the order of these actions. So washing the face, washing the hands, wiping the head, washing the feet, in that order. The sunan should be followed in order as well. Now, but they're sunnah. Would that matter? There's debates on certain ones here and there. But overall, yes, it does matter. Why? Because if you do tajdeed al-wudu, it does not count unless everything is in order, even though it's not changing your state. You already have wudu. You're just doing wudu again. You still have to follow all the steps. If you decide to get up and pray 2 rak'ah lillah for no reason, the only reason you have is to do it lillah. Perfect. You still have to follow all the steps of salah, even though the whole prayer in its entirety is what? Sunnah. You still have to follow the tartib. But now the tartib here in wudu at times can actually be eliminated. How? If you were to jump into a lake or an ocean and intend wudu, then that is valid. And you do not need tartib to follow the order at that time or in that scenario. Why? Because you're already in water. So in that scenario, you do not need any tartib. Imam al-Rafi'i said, but maybe we should tell them they should stay under the water for a certain duration, a duration that is equivalent to performing tartib. The mu'tamad is no, that is not needed. You do not need to stay under the water for a certain period of time to fulfill the act of tartib, because that act of order is not measured in time realistically. It's more of a concept. It might vary from one person to the other. So there's no dabit to that. So they say it's not required. A moment with the intention and you being underwater is suffice, walhamdulillah. Now let's move on to the sunan. The first is the siwak. And what's very interesting about the siwak is that some of the Shafi'iyya, and even Ramli and Ibn Hajar differ on this, consider the siwak part of sunan al-wudu. In other words, if you do it after washing your hands and you've already intended the sunan of wudu, you don't need any additional intention for using the siwak. But if you do it before you start your wudu, it will need its own intention. Why? Because it's not included into anything. So you intend that you're using the siwak to follow the sunnah. Now the siwak, you're supposed to move it side to side, start from your right side, work your way to the middle, then get to the left side, then get to the middle. You can use a toothbrush, doesn't have to be a siwak. If you use toothpaste, you'll just have to rinse out your mouth an extra time to remove that before you can do madmada and istinshaq. Some might say you don't need it, but it is makruh in our madhab to eat any food, any leftovers that got stuck in your teeth. This is makruh. So it might be mixed in with that toothpaste, so you're probably better off spitting it all out. Now, if you spit it all out and you don't rinse out your mouth before you make madmada, that will be okay. As we'll come to see in ghusl, you don't need an extra wash if there's filth. One wash is suffice to remove it. And we'll see that in ghusl, inshallah. Now, it's also recommended that you use a toothpick before and after siwak. If you're doing it in wudu, it's okay. It might prolong your wudu too much. You can do it outside. That's fine. You might want to intend to get extra reward, but that suffice, inshallah ta'ala. Thumma tasmiyah, saying Bismillah, which brings us to a very important question. Are our modern day bathrooms treated the same as the bathrooms before, or no? Many of our fuqaha today, they say no. The bathrooms before held najasa within them. Our bathrooms today do not hold any najasa. Sure, it might be mutanajjis in certain areas, especially if you have kids in a toilet, right? But it does not hold najasa. It's more of a bathroom than a waste room. So some say it does not hold the same value unless you're about to use it for that purpose. Then you want to say your dua outside. But if there's nothing in the toilet and it's a clean bathroom, it wouldn't hold the same rulings as their bathrooms before. Others said no. Regardless if it holds najasa or it does not, it's still a place that you relieve yourself. So therefore, always take that ruling. So there's khilaf. Okay. And the khilaf did not start there. It started when public showers came about. When public showers, when I say public, it doesn't mean that they were doing it in the street. It means that these were facilities to go in and take a shower in them. They differed then as well. And today they still differ, even in our madhab. Personally, I teach myself and my kids that we do it outside before we enter. You say dua dukhul al-khila, then you say your adhkar for wudu. Many of my mashayikh, they go with that other opinion that you can say the dhikr inside. Because here's their argument. You're not supposed to speak in the bathroom. You're not supposed to say anything holy in the bathroom. While you're going, the hukm is not indefinite. It's while you're releasing waste. which is a very good point. Because if you're in there, you're not releasing waste, then we shouldn't even be having an argument. If there's no waste in there, we shouldn't even be having an argument. So that's some details when it comes to that mas'ala. Either or, you want to say the basmala. He says, وَغَسْلِ الْكَفَّيْنِ. Now, some people came and said, the washing of the hands is not part of wudu. You do that when you wake up. Imam Shafi'i said, no. That's if you don't know. Maybe your hands might be dirty, might have something on them. That was the issue of the hadith where it says, when you wake up, wash your hands and then make wudu. That was just an example. And that's how we understood it. Now, it becomes problematic if you're making wudu out of a container. Because if you don't know the state of your hands and you put your hands into that bucket of water, then this act right here, is this haram or makruh? The majority of our fuqaha, if not all, say it's makruh because you did not know the state of your hands. You don't have yaqeen that they're filthy or anything, but you did not know the state of your hands, which is a problem. ثم المضمضة والاستنشاق والاستنثار. Taking water into the mouth, you gargle it gently and you spit it out. You can gargle it a little bit more, that's fine, unless you're fasting. You need to be cautious. Now, the bare minimum for madmada is just taking water in, swishing it like once, and spitting it out. And they call that majja or mujja. Right? That's your bare minimum. Swishing around a little bit more, gargling it gently would be the recommended, basically. You can go a little bit more if you can. If you're fasting, that's when you don't want to go beyond that. As for pulling water into your nose, you do this gently. Now, the way that you're supposed to do madmada and istinshaq, it's 3 handfuls of water, some for your mouth, some for your nose. You do not exaggerate the move if you're fasting. You use your right hand to bring that water to your mouth and nose, and you use your left hand to help blow out the excess water from your nose, and that's called istinthar. Tamam. طيب. There are other ways to do madmada and istinshaq. 3 for the mouth, 3 for the nose. 1 handful doing 3 for each from it. A handful for the mouth, handful for your nose, handful for your mouth, handful for your nose, etc. All of these scenarios were mentioned by the Shafi'i. Al-Imam al-Shafi'i said, I really like 3 for the mouth and then 3 for the hand. 3 handfuls for the mouth, then 3 for the nose. Why? He said, it seems very, very high in its hygiene a breakdown, very clean. But the nusus, he said, supported 3 handfuls, a little bit for your mouth, a little bit for your nose. A little bit for your mouth, a little bit for your nose, a little bit for your mouth, a little bit for your nose. Can you do your nose or do istinshaq and then do madmada? There's a little bit of debates on that. Would that impact the order or not? Even between the mutaakhirin. You should stick to how the Prophet ﷺ did it. What tathlith? When we say tathlith, a lot of people do not realize we mean tathlith in everything, even the basmala at the beginning. Bismillah, Bismillah, Bismillah. The adhkar at the end, 3 times. What about the 2 rak'ah after wudu? No, just 2 rak'ah. What about wiping the head? 3 times. What about takhleel? We'll speak about that in a moment. Clean between your fingers, between your toes, 3 times. Everything 3 times. That's what tathlith means for us. He says, وَمَسْحُ جَمِيعِ الرَّأْسِ, wiping the full head. because that's the perfect way to do it. So one wipe would be wetting both of your hands. You can put your thumb on your temples, touch your fingers from both hands, go all the way back to the back of the hairline and bring it all the way back. And that's once. Now, if you don't have hair that moves around when you do that, like me, I'm bald, and therefore doing all of that is almost pointless because you're not wiping anything but the scalp. Jamil. You can still just go all the way back with one and then do that a second time, but bringing the hands back, you won't have to. That's the pointless part because there's nothing there that you're bringing it back onto. What are you doing but touching the same exact spot? The point is that if you have hair, it's moving around and you're trying to wet all the hair on your head and in the boundaries of your head. He says, ثُمَّ الْأُذُنَيْنِ وَالصَّمَّاخَيْنِ. Now, the ears have always been a point of contention between the madhahib. Why? There's a group of ahadith that are between slightly weak, barely hasan. Some mention the ears with the face, some mention the ears with the head. But sahih hadith mention them separately. Someone this way, someone that way. So the Shafi'iyya, they went a little bit too far with this one, but it's nice. They said, so when you wash your face, wipe your ears. When you wipe your head, wipe your ears. And then after you're done with that, then actually wipe your ears. So it winds up getting to between 12 and 15, depending on how they're breaking it down. But let's focus on the proper way, the way that we consider as the sunnah. Because wiping it with the face, wiping it with the head, we're just doing that to get out of any problems we might fall into because of other scholars saying that, oh, it's wajib with the face or it's wajib with the head. So in order to solve that wujub, what do we say? Just go ahead and wipe it with it. Jameel. But what is the proper way in our madhab? What is the proper way that we're looking for? You wet your hands. You put your index fingers into your ears. You put your thumb behind your ears and you wipe. That's one. You do that 3 times. Then you take then you wet your hands again, and you take your index finger and you wipe in the curves of your ear. You do that 3 times. Then you wet your palms and you put them over your ear, and you do that 3 times. And this is the mu'tamad sunnah of wiping the ears. وَتَخْلِيلِ اللِّحْيَةِ الْكَثِيفَةِ. And this is why I spoke about earlier. Taking a handful of water, running it under the beard, getting it into the skin. This is sunnah. وَتَخْلِيلِ الْأَصَابِعِ. Oh, actually, before we move on to that next one, تَخْلِيلُ اللِّحْيَةِ الْكَثَّةِ. If there's a female who has a beard and leaves it, decides to keep it, they can make a fortune in a circus. She has to wash the skin beneath the beard. No exceptions for her. Why? Because a woman having a beard is a rare scenario. Rare scenarios do not get special laws. They have to go back to the original law and stick to it. This is where the ulama, the fuqaha, the usuliyun, they say, النادر لا حكم له. What is rare has no special ruling. So she'll have to get the water under that beard. That's a side note for you. وَتَخْلِيلِ الْأَصَابِعِ. That's both your fingers and your toes. How do you do it with your fingers? When you're washing your hands, you cross your fingers 3 times and rub out in between them. When you're doing your feet, you use your left small finger and you go in between your toes, your small toe, and the next one from the bottom of your foot, and you rub out in between them. Then you get your left foot, and you do the same thing, but from the big toe to the small toe. And you do that 3 times. Whichever way you do it 3 times is fine. If you do the right foot 3 times and then the left foot 3 times, that's fine. It's easier that way. وَتَطْوِيلُ الْغُرَّةِ وَالتَّحْجِيلِ. The Prophet ﷺ said that the believers will come on Judgment Day where their limbs are glowing. From what, Ya Rasulullah? From the parts that they used to make wudu from. Allah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Then he says, فَمَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَنْ يُطِيلَ غُرَّتَهُ فَلْيَفْعَلْ. Whoever can extend, go beyond a little bit, so they should do so. Abu Hurairah used to wash his arms up to his shoulders and his feet up until his knee. You don't have to go that far. But what you can do is go beyond the boundaries of that limb to get that reward. Judgment Day is going to be the harshest thing that anyone has ever witnessed. I recommend anything that you can do, then you ought to do. Take, for example, if you memorize and you practice that which is in Surah Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran, they'll be with you in your grave, keep you company. They'll testify for you on Judgment Day. The ahadith are enormous about these. Take every opportunity you can get. He says, وَالْمُوَالَةِ. Now, bear in mind, if a person has continuous filth, what do we mean by continuous filth? We mean a person that he has a urine issue, where he's continually dripping urine, or a female that has continuous bleeding, or anything that has continuous filth being on that person, not externally, but from within. This person has a special scenario. His intention for wudu should be asking Allah permission to allow him to pray, because he can't remove his filth. His private areas need to be cleaned prior, padded or stuffed according to the gender and the ability to seal those areas. They need to make wudu immediately after and then pray immediately after. That's muwalat. No pauses, no breaks. That is wajib, that is a rukn for a person with continuous filth issues. Now, Imam Shafi'i in his Qadim, he said muwala is wajib indefinitely for everyone. But in his Jadid, he found that there's too many ahadith where it's not necessarily the case for average people. Okay? In other words, if you step away from making wudu to do something and come back, that's okay. And this brings into other discussions the fuqaha had. Number one, can you break up the wudu? Well, if you say yes, then wouldn't that mean you can also break up the intention of wudu? I intend to wash my hands towards my wudu. Go and run on the treadmill, come back, and I intend to wipe my head for my wudu. Hop on the elliptical, come back, I intend to, and so on. Would that work? Well, the mu'tamad al-madhab is yes, it would. And the intention and breaking down the wudu would be fine because muwala is sunnah. So when there's scenarios where you have breaks in the wudu or mistakes that happened, technically, all they have to do is go back to continue making wudu and adjust their intention. Jameel. So like if a person's making wudu and then they decide that they're no longer going to make wudu, everything from that moment would not count. All they have to do to fix this, even if it's minutes later, is adjust their niyyah from that point onwards and redo those acts, because you can break down wudu. Because we look at wudu as a collection of acts. As opposed to salah, it's not a collection of acts. It's a set of acts that begin with a point and end with a point. And it has to be done together. Wudu is a set of independent acts brought together. If completed, then the person is called tahir. This is why if a person is halfway done his wudu, he cannot use those limbs to touch the Quran yet. Why? Because the person is not called tahir. He's still considered muhdath until he finishes the set of acts. But as a premise, take this for your future studies. We look at wudu as a group of individual separate acts. Collectively, they make the person be called tahir. He's lifted the state of hadath. Salah is a block of acts that are not independent, that must be done together. And this is a very important separation between the two acts. وترك الاستعانة في الصب وترك التنشيف بخرقة. These two right here, there's a little bit of contention upon them, because the first one says, don't ask anyone help if you don't need any help to pour water over you to make wudu, and don't ask anyone help, or don't dry yourself with a towel or a napkin or a paper towel after you make wudu. The Prophet ﷺ asked someone to pour water over him. The Prophet ﷺ, he did use a towel or a rag or a cloth to dry himself. Some of the Shafi'i are like, why are we saying these two? I'll explain why. Number one, you're seeking assistance to perform an act of ibadah. Bear in mind something. We say that the act of wudu is ibadah. This is why we said it needs a niyyah. But we do not say that the act of wudu is ta'abbudi. There's a big difference between ibadah and ta'abbudi. Ta'abbudi means we don't understand why we do it. We don't believe that. We believe we do understand why we do it. There are some Shafi'iyah that said it was ta'abbudi. That is a weak opinion. The act of wudu is an ibadah. It's a fulfillment of a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to do. So it's an act of ibadah. It's just not ta'abbudi. It's ma'qul. We know why we do it. So when we say something is ta'abbudi or ma'qul, that has nothing to do with its intent. But when we say something is ibadah, it means it's an act of worship. We're fulfilling a command. Now, with that understanding, wudu is ibadah. With ibadah, your reward is based upon your effort, right? So, if you struggle, you get more reward. That's how ibadahs work. So if you need someone to pour water over you, you're removing a struggle off of yourself. You're decreasing hasanat. Not the hasanat that you would have gotten, the rewards that you would have gotten, no. But additional ones that you could have gotten. And this is why it's preferred, if you don't really need it, you just pour for yourself. If it's the wudu is being done via pouring. Okay, so you can get that more reward. This is why we say in fasting you shouldn't brush your teeth after dhuhr. Why? Because those odors of you being hungry are starting to appear. It's a struggle, right? Yeah. So removing that, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet ﷺ said that odor from the sa'im is better than the scent of misk. Then this means you shouldn't be trying to remove it. Okay, it's a blessing. It's part of your struggle. It's a sign of your struggle. Don't remove it. Be proud of it. Same thing here. Does it mean you can't remove it? No, you can. This is makruh to do so. You're removing something that involves your status and your effort and your struggle. You can. It's understandable. You have meetings you have to go to. You have to speak to people. It might, you have an excuse really to do it. Same thing here. You're unable to do it. There's not enough time for you to be struggling because it's time for the salah. Okay, you have an excuse. Now, if you have an excuse, the karaha is gone. There's no karaha in doing that. There's no sunnah in letting it go because you have an excuse, you have a need. Same thing with drying off. They said if it's too cold out and that might make you sick by leaving your limbs wet, then obviously go ahead and dry off. Okay? Or it's so hot and humid that it could cause your skin to dry out or anything, then it's okay. You can go ahead and do it. Not that it's forbidden or anything like that. It's just preferable that you avoid these things, especially like wiping off or drying down. You know what it looks like? It almost looks like you're removing the markings of that ibadah off of you. So they don't like that. Why do that if you don't need to? If you need to, then obviously, yes, go right ahead. But if you don't, then why? And that's the point that the Shafi'i are trying to make. If you don't need to, why do it? Inshallah, we're going to stop here bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And we're going to start with an-nawaqid bi'idhnillah in our next class. Leave questions inshallah ta'ala to our Telegram group. وأقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.